Hello, everyone, and welcome back to RHAP. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are here today to talk about another episode of The Getaway. It's episode 4, with I believe just one left. It appears.
Yes, this is the penultimate episode. We're almost done. You almost are free from covering this show.
Yes, The Getaway and House of the Dragon both having their penultimate episodes
Ooh.
in the same week. So we'll see which has the more dramatic conclusion as we head into the finale of The Getaway. But you heard him with me this week, Ben. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about this episode because it's really when we start to get real weird with it. And I can give personally a lot of insights into the various ways in which we were getting, because this just touches that what actually made it into the episode here is like just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we were doing behind the scenes this day to try to mess with them. And this was the only thing that I was interested in doing at all the entire time. So I have a lot to talk about.
Oh my gosh.
Lucky
so
for
ready.
us, I know somebody that really loves everything weird. Except for people that are weird, maybe. It's Sasha. How you doing, Sasha?
Correct. Okay, I love to mess with people, so I can't wait. I can't wait till you spill all this tea on what could have been, what did happen, everything.
Yes. I will say, I think, we kind of start this episode, it felt like there was fallout from the previous episode, which was the vote and the awkwardness of Patch still being there. And then there was also the planning for, like, how do we mess with them? It felt like you guys had made it far enough along in the process that you were like, we can experiment with some things. If it messes up, whatever, we're close enough to the end. And if it helps trick them even further, all the better. Is that kind of the vibe?
Yeah, we have an outline for the show where at this point where it says like at episode 4, like the start of this day, if they still haven't figured it out, it no longer matters what happens from here on out. So we're allowed to do anything we want. And that's when making the show got less scary and more fun.
I'm ready. Ugh, I just feel like, do we just dive deep into what is the craziest thing that you had that maybe didn't happen that you had planned at least?
There are lots of things. I have a whole document because I like we all had sort of different, things that we cared about behind the scenes. Like Amy was just interested in this show you guys just talked to Amy. She was most interested in the show just as like a social strategy game. She was just like, all this behind the scenes stuff, you guys are crazy. I just want to make a good competition show. I, on the other hand, had no interest in the competition show element of it at all. I was like, I just want to see what we can do to these people. And so I was writing a lot of stuff down. We had I had a lot of ideas for things that we could do that we didn't end up doing. One of those things was we were going to have them all sort of like film promotional material for the show as though they were the main character during the confessionals. And so we would also have this long run of ads where they were like, it's me, the snitch, and on this show I'm the boss, and we would just put those back to back. We didn't have time to film those, but that was going to be fun. We had a reporter with us the whole time, partially because he was covering the show, but we were going to use him. We also just didn't end up having time for this. We filled him in on what the show was, and what we were going to do with him is we were going to have him secretly pull each person aside and be like, I heard you're the main character of this show. And so then they were going to do a whole interview with each person as though they were the main character, and like have them talk at length about like, so why you, like, why are you the special one that they picked to be the main character of this show? And then we were just going to string all of those answers back to back. that one seemed a little mean. So it's probably good.
Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, I wish you had more time to do that.
I do too. At the start of every day, I was like holding my piece of paper. I was like, can we do any of these? And Sam was like, no. And then it was finally on day 4. He was like, okay, you can do a thing today.
Yay. The one thing.
But so, you saw the whole thing with Dan and Matt. Matt
Yes.
dressed as Miss Terry. We did that the day before when they were arriving at the last elimination site, and they didn't see it at all. And so we cut it from the show. But we did that whole thing. No. It wasn't the day before. It was before Dan got eliminated, and we did it with just Matt. We had Matt dressed up as Miss Terry, and they all... I actually think, if I recall, I was talking to them after the show. I actually think that Patch saw it and was like, I'm not going to say anything or acknowledge that ever. But then we were like, we got to do it again because they didn't even see.
Yeah, because I was wondering how Matt got picked as Miss Terry, but now this makes more sense because back when it first happened, he was your only option, and then he became and that's typecasting. Got it.
Exactly. And we weren't sure if it was going to be Miss Terry. We didn't have any idea. We were just like, we should have them do something that they see that they're confused by. Mm-hmm. So we were going to dress him up as a chicken or like an astronaut or whatever. It was just that morning we were like, Amy, go to Target, see if you can find something. And she was like, I found a hat and a dress that will make Matt look like Miss Terry. And so that's what we went with.
I loved the like flashback to Amy just lecturing them on various facts about Miss Terry and the fact that they wrote notes. Because I would have too. I would have written notes for every single thing.
Oh my God. I would have been so mad if like I sat there and actually, tried to be a good like student and be like, oh yes, look at me. I took notes because I'm sure there's a quiz, eventually that's gonna come up. Nothing. It's embarrassing for me.
Yeah, we made them sit there for like 45 minutes. I can't believe Amy did that whole thing. It was awesome.
God. That's like when those these presentation parties that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that reminds me of. Poor Amy. Just take that to your next presentation party.
Look, Amy loves making a PowerPoint. That's her biggest strength. So she was well equipped.
I will say this episode, I felt like I was most excited for the messing with the players. Like, I think in part because the vote was such a foregone conclusion. If the immunity wasn't one, that I was just like, oh, I cannot wait. Like I'm really excited for the Miss Terry thing. And it's funny that you mentioned that they didn't see it the first time you tried it, because I thought that they didn't see it the first time I watched. Like the first time we saw them go through it, I was like, oh, I don't think any of them saw it except for maybe Georgia. But then like you did see that Steven saw it and looked away. And then I was like, I still don't even know where in the shot Patch was able to see it. I was like, he didn't seem like he was looking at all.
Yeah, well, because I think Patch was thinking they were talking about the thing when he saw it like 2 days earlier.
Yeah, maybe.
But it was this sort of interesting and awkward thing where like I think they were all really trying to be well behaved. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't want to screw the show up. And so you saw we sent Adam out to be like, talk about it. But what's interesting is that like at this point in the game, they were all so invested in the social strategy that they were just like locked in, and they were like, I'm not going to get distracted by anything. I don't care what's going on. It's like all that matters is like alliances, which is good because that meant that they weren't doing the thing that I guess we were ostensibly trying to prevent them from doing, which was figuring out the premise of the show. So whatever distracted them was a win for us.
I love that. I love, and you could tell that they were just like, if it were people we didn't know in production, we would totally try to game this. But it seems like because it's y'all and y'all spent so much time pre-show, doing the presentation, working with them one-on-one, relationship building is so important. And you not only in-game strategy, but with production, because they literally, I think, are doing everything to make sure it's a good show as the one snitch. Bless their hearts.
And that was our hope. I mean, they were acting like we had to design this sort of assuming that they were going to be as bad as they could possibly be. But,
Yes.
fortunately, they were all being well behaved and didn't want to ruin the show. And again, sometimes, like, at this point, when we're almost like trying to tempt them to break the game to a fault, where they were just like, whatever you guys say, everything's chill with me. But
yeah, it's like an interesting conundrum where like the idea is that they're seeing this thing that they're not supposed to see. But then if they're not supposed to see it, obviously they're not going to talk about it. They're not going to talk about it in confessional. They're not going to talk about it with each other. So then you have to then give them permission to talk about the thing that they weren't supposed to see, which if they're thinking about it, might make them feel like, well, wait, if we weren't supposed to see it, why should we be talking about it?
Yeah. And yet, like, I was talking to them after the show ended up filming, and they could hardly remember this moment. They, again, I think like they were like, yeah, whatever. Matt's Miss Terry. Okay. Like, what's important is that, like, Georgia and Steven are in an alliance, and these things like that we actually didn't anticipate them focusing on as much as they ultimately did.
Social strategy can be very consuming, like I think it takes a lot of sort of like mental effort because you're like wondering how much you can trust the people you're with. I'm sure Patch was feeling like he's been rejected and betrayed by these people, but they're also friendly with each other. So it makes sense that there was a lot to sort of like keep on top of for them, and that like especially like if you have a limited amount of time to strategize or to like make your case, you're thinking, how do I get them on my side? Way more so than you're thinking like, should we figure out the mystery of Miss Terry?
Oh my gosh. And I wonder if like in Patch's mind, he's like, no, this does not matter. Like at the end, like I'm just trying to save myself.
Yeah. I mean, like maybe there's a world where he could have come up with a theory about Miss Terry that would have helped make a case for why I should stay. But like, what could that possibly be?
Yeah, I mean, part of the hope was like if you throw in this X factor thing that can't be explained, like players can sort of use that to whatever extent they want to, and especially considering that, like, if Patch didn't get the safety in this particular vote, we know he's out. So we just have to give them something to work with and think about and like get scared by. That isn't just the game.
One thing I was thinking of during this episode was like, obviously Patch at one point suspected I might not be the only snitch. Then you show him the poster and he's like, okay, so I am the only one. But I have to imagine that when he gets voted out and there's a surprise twist that he's not actually out yet, he must have been completely convinced at that point that you were just like throwing in a twist to save the only snitch, right?
Yeah, totally. I didn't think about that at the time because it was like that vote was going to go down that way no matter what. But we, like, whoever got spared would have thought that, I'm sure. And I mean, I imagine Amy talked about this last time, but like that wasn't ever supposed to happen.
Yeah.
The game was designed for more people. But that ended up being a really sort of hugely advantageous thing for us because that also gave them this sense that like, oh, that was the twist, was that there wasn't a vote then. When in fact that wasn't supposed to be there at all.
Yeah, I feel like we saw some amount of like frustration from the players. I would imagine, especially from somebody like Steven, who's probably in a little bit more trouble if things don't go down in the right way. And that's something that I think you do see from players, especially players that feel like they're doing well. If like a twist comes around and kind of screws them over, was there a lot of like complaining or like guys, what are you doing? What are you doing here?
Yeah, no, I remember. I mean, they got over it by the next day.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
they were, Stephen and Georgia were genuinely upset by the whole thing, which was like the first time that anyone on the production had been upset with us. I'm sure that actual reality show producers deal with this all the time, and they're just like whatever. But I was like very stressful for me because we were like, is this ethical? What we're doing are we doing this in the best possible way? We had like all these emergency meetings right as it was happening to try and figure out like, is it fair? We were at the last minute trying to figure out. Ultimately, we did the votes the way that we had planned, but like, is it more fair to have the votes be cumulative across the two? Or is it more fair to throw them out and then start from the beginning? Like we immediately were like, as soon as they got upset, we were like, oh, like we need to figure out the best, most fair way to actually slice this. And then like we made them sit down and we like gave them rules deliberation. But very stressful to have your contestants be upset with you. Especially since we knew that we were lying to them about a lot of other stuff that they didn't know about yet.
Oh, well, I think probably the fact that each of them thought that they were the only snitch probably made them more upset than they otherwise would have been, because they probably felt like you're supposed to be on my side.
Yeah.
You're screwing me. Like, this is stressful enough that I'm like, I got through that vote as the snitch, and I'm like, I'm getting there, and then you guys are throwing this curveball at me. I need help, not obstacles.
Yeah, 100%. Well, because also like you've seen that whenever people get voted out, they like feel really bad because they feel like they've ruined the whole show. And I'm sure that Steven and Georgia were like, no, you're gonna ruin the show for us. And also, I think that there was some degree to which they were upset by the fact that might have been the twist of the show, because they were all anticipating a twist because the show was bad in their minds. And they kept coming up to us and being like, so like, is this show going to be good? Or like, what's the deal with this show? Because like, we're just sort of driving and doing challenges. And we were just like, yeah, it's going to be great. Don't worry about it. And so they were all like, I think they could all tell that there was going to be some kind of twist. And the fact that if this was the big twist of the show, it would be extraordinarily lame. And so I think there was some degree to which they were like, this show sucks after this happened.
So funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved. So, okay, great. That leads me to think, like, did anyone as the snitch almost ask you, like, hey, can I get special powers? Or, like, I'm on the chopping block. Can you help me get out of this?
I do not recall them. There would be times where they would like try and ask us for information and we would just tell them that we can't talk to them. But I think at a certain point they got so conditioned with us shutting them down and them being babysat at all times that they were just not asking questions that they weren't supposed to ask, which was part of the idea. Like we wanted the, I don't know if you guys have ever read Foucault. Michel Foucault, the sort of the philosopher from the 1960s, had these theories about, surveillance and the way that you can get people to self-police by, giving them the sense that they are being watched at all times. I think that we put those laws in place, within the first few days, up to the point that they would do whatever we wanted them to do on their own by day 3. Maybe it's a little in the weeds. for you guys here.
Absolutely
Rob
not.
has a podcast.
Hello, it's not like we watch a whole show where people are being monitored 24/7 or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You guys should read a little
Yeah.
Foucault. That could really, up your analysis of Big Brother.
Great. Listen, our next book club. That's what we're doing. Got it.
Right.
Can't wait.
I noticed that after the votes are read, like everyone goes into like complete silence for the walk off. I imagine that this is like to avoid a scenario where somebody gives away the game by being like, "Oh, you got me." Yeah.
Yes. This was a thing that concerned us a lot because we obviously if we told them that they were allowed to talk or emote when that happened, we were like, yeah, someone would just say, no, you got me, I'm the snitch. And we were really quite worried to the extent that like we had planned out different sets where like maybe they were all separated when the votes came in and we could but eventually we realized that like I think we could set that precedent well enough that they were really not allowed to talk, and like that it was even within the premise of the fake show that made sense that they were willing to behave.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay, let's talk about the challenge this week because it was a team challenge and there was immunity on the line. And now I kind of assumed that to get the immunity, you would have to like do worse at the challenge. If you're looking at it as a loyal player, like I can get immunity, but I have to do something that will make me worse at the challenge or underperform in the challenge in order to obtain it, and therefore maybe look like a snitch if I don't get to the immunity, or if I do get the immunity, make me look like a snitch. But this was more along the lines of the like the cooking, serving challenge, where the team that performs the best is going to receive the immunity. And because it's teams, my first thought for Steven being paired up with Patch was, well, I could probably just throw this.
Yeah.
Throw this so that Patch doesn't get immunity. Patch definitely leaves, and I get a bunch of snitch money, and there's a great excuse for me to get a bunch of snitch money.
Yeah, we thought he was going to do that too, 100%. This was another thing that we were in our hotel rooms the night before, like on the floor crying because we couldn't figure out how to do it, because we didn't think that it was going to we work out like this originally when we designed this challenge. And so we were like, we need to figure out a way to make it not impossible for Patch, assuming almost certainly that whoever's with him is going to try and throw. The solution we had was that we, instead of just giving the team $100 total, we gave them each $50. So even if Steven wanted to just throw, Patch could still operate on his own and jettison him.
Oh, okay.
But
very Caleb and Frankie, if you get the Big Brother reference.
I do not, but I believe
you. Yes. Listen, Frankie Grande killing it. Yeah.
Frankie Grande was on Big Brother. No, maybe we've talked about this.
Yes,
he was, and his partner in a challenge tried to throw it, and then he was able to do the whole thing on his own. It was in fact probably easier that he did it on his own.
Yes.
Yeah. So we wanted to give Patch the opportunity to do a Frankie Grande, as it were. But it turned out that Steven, I guess, was so caught up in the whole thing. This is one of the difficult things about designing these games, is that when you think it through and you have hours or days to think a thing through, you will reach different conclusions than a person who has been given 3 seconds and is on camera will come to. And so it turned out it just sort of didn't even really occur to him to throw. He was just like, well, they told me to do the thing, I'm gonna do the thing. And I think he was most hyper focused on getting immunity rather than preventing Patch from getting it, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder, because I think that the alpaca challenge probably saw the most amount of sabotage, and my memory at least, they spent like an hour or something, like learning how to do the alpaca stuff, where they probably also had time to, I imagine, think of different ways that they might want to sabotage, or at the very least prepare their minds for the fact that they might be sabotaging. So maybe that was a factor for that one.
Yeah, I think certainly that is a factor. I also think that this sort of like begets the idea that I do think that like this psychology is important to keep in mind, that like the Georgia Patch Alliance was not a real alliance because they both knew that they were screwing each other. Like I think that Stephen, or I'm sorry, the Georgia Alliance. I'm tired. The Georgia
Right.
Stephen Alliance was not a real alliance because they were both willing to screw each other over in the end. So I think that like as far as Stephen was concerned, like, is it more important to get Patch out and like keep my ally in? Maybe not so much, because ultimately he was willing to stab her in the back at the end anyway. And so I think that like there is a sort of more individualistic psychology going through all of their heads, and at least they're letting on to each other.
Yeah, and maybe for what it's worth, like if and I don't know that he was thinking this way, because I think from what he said, he was just kind of going for it. But like, if he is able to win that competition with Patch and they both get immunity, it is probably Foreign, I imagine, that gets voted out in that spot, given that Foreign just betrayed Patch in the first place. And then that almost is a better spot for Steven in the next round, given that they've already voted Patch out once. More likely that Georgia would stick by Steven, as opposed to with Foreign, who she does have a relationship with. Like, there's still a chance she could side with Foreign over Steven in the finals. So there's some validity to it.
Yeah, I'm also thinking, as a production standpoint, is there a way where, something besides, of course, immunity, which is huge, is there a way to be like, you can't throw, right? That's not how this works. Or is there, just like the alpaca, is there timing, right, given to everyone to say like, you're the snitch, so you get extra time in your hotel room alone to think this through? But in reality, everyone does. And does that
like if you had actually warned them about the challenge ahead of time, like some of them thought that the snitch might have.
Yeah. And, like, would that have, completely grounded Steven instead of, like, Steven was giving very much chaos energy because, right, it seems like it wasn't much time from when he got the challenge to the execution of it. But I wonder if all of them got the challenge early as the only snitch, does that, change it, and does it make it more boring? Because does Steven just sit down and he's like, I'm just not doing this. Cool, bye. Or is he like, I'm the only snitch, so I can't give myself away that bad. So here's my actual strategy. Like, would he have, would everyone have had a little bit, of time to think that through? I don't know.
We considered doing that from the very beginning, like giving everyone a sort of a heads up on what the challenge is going to be and sort of all the details for that exact reason, so that they could think through how they were going to sabotage it. What we ultimately decided is that the risk of that, ultimately, I think it would have been fine, but we decided that the risk of them slipping up and revealing that they knew what the challenge was too high, and had they done that, it would have given everything away. Because if you knew that you were getting special information, then you realize, wait, they're getting special information, like, it blows the whole thing up. And so that was one of the things that we were just like being perhaps overly cautious about. But we also felt that like there were ways to sabotage a lot of these challenges that were boring, and that you probably would have arrived to if you had thought about it too much.
Oh, valid. Okay. Yeah.
And so ultimately we decided against it, but it was something we were thinking about from the start.
Yeah. Okay, so the challenge is you have to purchase an amount of items on a list that match certain criteria for as little money as possible. And I thought it was pretty fun running around to the various places. Did you ever like consider putting up like how much they had spent, like to track it like visually as we were watching, or did that feel like it gave away the game too much?
Oh, like as a graphic on
Yeah,
screen?
like, oh, they just spent, $4 on this rock. Like that they've now
A
spent
bank, yeah,
$20.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do the graphics for this episode, but I'm pretty sure the only reason we didn't do that was because we wanted the winner to be a surprise, especially considering how sort of high stakes this particular challenge was.
I mean, I was very, because like it was definitely difficult to calculate in real time and sort of like who has done the most, but I really did feel like the electronics purchase at the end would have sunk Georgia and Foreign. So I was surprised that they still managed to win, but I guess it was probably just like the little things that added up for Steven and Patch, that Georgia was able to get things for free, basically.
Well,
When I tell you, when Georgia went and got that returned the cup, I thought she'd already bought the battery powered thing. So I said, "Oh my god, they're gonna win by like such a ridiculous margin." And then they go and buy the like battery powered. I said, "Oh, it's over for them." The roller coaster that little thing. I thought you snowed me completely, because it went from like, oh, they lost, to like, oh my god, they're returning it, all good, they're winning, to like, oh my god, they lost, and now Foreign or Georgia's going home, to then that not being the case. Wild.
well, there were a lot of little things that this challenge came down to. There was a little while there where we thought that the fate of Patch in this entire game might come down to, has Dan eaten a dog treat before? Because I was over with Dan when that was going on and they were running off with them. And like when they radioed in, they were like, okay, they've bought a dog treat. I was like, Dan, have you eaten dog food before? And Dan was like, yeah, I've eaten dog food. And I was like, oh man, that's really bad. It's really bad for them. It's not going to count. But then when he saw the dog treat, he's like, well, I haven't had a dog treat before.
I appreciate it.
I have a question about that. If he had a dog treat before, but it wasn't that specific brand or kind,
there was a lot of litigation about this in the production van. We ultimately said, Dan, it is up to you to decide whether or not you've had this, and you're the final word. And he was ultimately very generous. But there was a while where I was like, oh my god, Patch is going to get kicked out because Dan's eating dog food. Like, this is so bad. But I guess it wouldn't have even come down to that in the end, fortunately for Patch. Or unfortunately.
Oh, poor Patch. It was, again, just so silly. And I just appreciated that they went with dog food, while Georgia is like the organic, she's like adding a bunch of names like they do on Food Network to, make like a piece of toast sound like much better. That it's a toast. And they'll be like, oh, this like fried toasted concoction. Stop. It's toast. So I appreciated Dan being like, no, I'll give you the dog treat. That's funny.
So yes, we do ultimately see that that Patch and Steven are not going to win this one. Do you know by how much they lost?
Yeah, 624 to 711.
But in terms of like the actual dollar amount difference that they spent, do we know?
No,
I can't remember, but it was quite close. It really was quite close. I think that like it was a 1 or 2 item difference.
Wow.
In the end. So
that rock.
It's too bad.
Getting stuff for free, outright. I wouldn't have even thought of it. That's why when I was watching that, I was like, duh, that is the right thing to do. And Foreign goes, that's pretty privilege. Oh my gosh. You have it too. Come on now.
So it's at this point, like I appreciate that you guys kind of like speed through the actual vote process, because I think everyone understands that it's basically impossible. And Patch tries to like pitch a like at least tie it up, guys, but like of course, speaking from a social strategic standpoint, there's zero incentive for them to do that and piss off Steven for no reason. And then Steven maybe still comes back. It's like there's, if they had a chance to just fully vote out Steven, there's at least some incentive. But even then, of course, not really for Georgia. So it is going to be Patch, but again, I appreciate that he really he fought hard there. Like he really did not give up. You could tell he really cared. And I think part of that too, again, is that like you don't want to disappoint showrunners. you don't want to like fail the show. Where like some of these shows, a person's about to go, they're like, whatever, I'm the real winner of this show anyway. You guys suck, but he really stuck in there.
Yeah, he said, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
No, I mean, yeah, he's a real game player, that Patch. Yeah, I was like, I would have been checked out at that point, but I was impressed with his gumption.
Oh my God. No, me trying to do math, right? To be like, can I get stay? I don't think it's happening.
I think that one thing that I've noticed, and I'm wondering if we'll see it in the next episode, is that like nobody, since at least the first episode, like nobody's really made a hard pitch for this person is the snitch. I know it. And I imagine that's because they all think they are the snitch. And so it's much easier to be like, well, it was probably Matt, right? Like it was probably that guy. Because everyone wants like the snitch hunting to not be the main component of what they're doing. But I'm curious to see if we get some of that in the final round, because that will matter a lot more. For like, we have to be very sure that we're not bringing the snitch with us, and therefore there's only one other person that I like. If I'm pitching to you, I have to pitch like, Georgia, it's not just loyalty that you should take me, but also Foreign's clearly the snitch, right? Like, come on. So I'm curious to see how they make those pitches moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, because you saw in the van almost every single day after the elimination, they would go like, so I'm pretty sure the snitch is gone. We don't have to think about that anymore. Moving on. And I think there's an extent to which it's like you just don't even want that to be the conversation. Like you want people talking about different things. If you're the snitch, you just don't want people thinking about the snitch. But it is certainly true that when it comes down to the final three players, that is a hugely important factor in deciding who the final two are going to be. Which, I shan't spoil how that all goes down, but it comes back into play.
What's very funny to me is that surely you then have to start making pitches that somebody else is the snitch, but nobody will nobody will care.
Nobody will care, and nobody will believe you.
Yes, exactly. They'll just be like, great points, man. What a hard decision for me, not the snitch.
It's like we'd be like Georgia, right? Steven is doing such a good job. No one does a better job than Steven. Steven, good.
Ben, I did notice last episode there was an interesting character. It looked just like you.
Yes.
Had a great looking hat that turned out was I guess property of an alpaca. I'm not sure.
It was just Tomar Leche's favorite hat. Not property of Tomar Leche, just sort of a hat that Tomar Leche coveted.
Okay, interesting. Can you tell me the story of this man in this hat?
Well, this is actually an interesting thing, the way the hats went down. I just brought a bunch of hats from my apartment, and we scattered them all across the farm. There were like 12 hats. And I don't. You know what? No, I will say this. Whatever. The hat that they ultimately ended up going with, which was the hat that I was wearing, the farmer hat, that wasn't the hat it was supposed to be. But we realized we were like, oh, this is going to take too long. And so I was getting these signals from everyone else. They were like, yes, that's the hat now. Just say that's the hat. He did something clever. That's the hat. But in fact, the actual hat was what we had done was we laid out all 12 hats in front of the woman who ran the farm, and we were like, which one would be Tomar Leche's favorite? And she just picked one. She was like, she would like that one, and then that was the hat. And so the intention was you just have to try on the different hats until
It
you
genuinely was
hat.
just one of the random hats strewn in.
Wait, that's so fun. And Tomar Leche is the girlfriend, or is the not girlfriend, correct?
Of the dog?
Yeah,
Of Odin.
Yes.
Oh, she was Odin's girlfriend.
Oh,
officially. But Odin, he gets around.
It's Odin. Okay. Lives up to your name, we'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
But no, the thing is, because I was like, she lost her man, she lost her hat, like what's going on? But it's okay. Looks like everything's fine.
She's a real diva.
Poor Patch, who was so proud of the hat solve.
I know. Well, we were just like, oh, he's so proud. Let's let him have this win. Make it that hat at this point.
Don't listen
Whatever.
to this, Patch. Turn it off. Listen, that man got spit in the mouth. What more do you need?
I know. Oh, that challenge was brutal. They really were going for it. They were just covered they smelled horrible for the rest of the day. It was awful.
That poor car driver.
But also, like, they were complaining all the time. And I was like, you guys aren't, you're not on Survivor. Like,
oh God, this is so funny.
Get over it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you do end up, of course, giving the reveal to Patch. I thought this was a fun one, especially the way that he reveals his own role to Dan and Matt. That, like, it's me. I'm the guy.
It's me. I'm the drama. And then Dan was like, wait, but there's more.
It was very sweet. Well, it was so good to like get to give Patch that little win after just dragging him through the mud all day. And like you could tell that he was all the way back in the mental cage we wanted him to be in, and then we got to tell him that actually he was right all along, even if he had completely abandoned that theory at that point, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, I want to ask more, but I imagine it's just in the next episode more of his reaction. But was there anything else from this episode, or really like throughout these first four that we might not know that you like might want to share?
I mean, I will say, like, because this never makes it in, but we were up until midnight almost every night with Dan and Matt. Well, originally just Matt, just talking about all the different ways we could gaslight everyone. They were so into it, which was like really fun. But I have like an hour and a half long clip on my phone of just us in a hotel room talking through all the possibilities, and we sound like utterly delirious. There's like a 12-minute run where we're just talking about like, what if Dan was dressed up as a beetle and he was crawling around the RV and they saw him crawling around and they were like, why is Dan a beetle? What does it mean?
Not a beetle.
So we didn't like that was the fun part was the scheming behind the scenes. And it was fun to be able to do that with the eliminated contestants the whole time, because we were worried that they were going to get really bored and want to leave us. But we literally couldn't get rid of them if we wanted to. There were no airports the entire drive that we went from. Like we were truly in the middle of nowhere. That place that you saw where we did our final elimination, so cool. Cisco, we don't even really get to get into it, but it's this like abandoned like artists enclave out in the middle of the desert. So like all that is to say, we couldn't get rid of them, so we were having a lot of fun with them behind the scenes.
No, they seem really good sports about it. Like they're not like pouty or boring in the background. Like they're very much into it and want to almost hurt the people that hurt them. You know, hurt people, and I love that for me as the viewer.
Yeah. No, ultimately they're the real winners of the show. Correct. Because they get to get revenge on everyone. You know, the real winners just get money.
Yeah. Money is money.
Sasha, anything else from this episode?
No, this was really exciting. And the only thing I wanted to say is the Georgia Steven thing where they're both like, well, I'm just gonna drag until the end and then it'll be okay. And they're each doing it to each other. Oh, just finally hearing them, I think, spell it out, right? Because we've hypothesized, they've said it, but not fully been like, no, I'm dragging to the final, and they don't know that I'm doing it to them. I cannot wait for that reveal for both of them to be like, well, I guess we just became friends, and that's nice instead of me being the sole winner and screwing you.
I'm very excited for the finale and to be able to reveal the twist to the people who are still in the game, especially people who thought they just probably had a sole victory.
Oh, that's I forgot about the soul.
Because it's gonna be two people who are like,
gotcha, bitch.
But
yeah, no, it's I mean, you'll see, it's very funny because there's in fact a lot of guilt going into the actual victory.
Makes sense.
And then the nice thing is that we get to alleviate that at the very end and be like, you know.
Oh my gosh. I hope
stick around for another week.
At the same time. That's what I'm most excited for. Oh my gosh. And I just think Foreign's reaction is going to be so funny. So I can't wait.
I have to give major props to Foreign, I think, as the person who is the most dedicated to his role as the snitch by far. Like he is always looking for a way to sabotage, even when it makes no sense to him.
He's a real, I mean, he's a real ham. He was one of the first people, like as soon as we pitched this show, Sam was like, we need foreign man in a foreign land. He's going to be the star. He was like, I was not familiar with Foreign's channel before this. We made this show, but he was, it was so much fun. Yeah, no, he was every single challenge going as hard as he possibly could, which we did appreciate. I don't know if it was necessarily the best strategy, but you know, it's good to have one of those folks.
I just loved him being like, it's hard to sabotage. Georgia's just too good at this. But luckily she forgot about the penalty money, so that's my way of sabotaging this one.
No, it's just he's so unserious because I can't remember if it was this episode or last, but you know, we've heard Foreign, right? Like go on a whole thing. I'm not strong. Oh, if they make me walk or run, like it's over. Shoot me dead, was his line, right? All this. Then I think that it is either the next episode or the episode after. He's like, I hope it's something with strength. Foreign, didn't you just say you can't? What's going on, sir? So I would have caught that because I'm messy and been like, oh, so you lied about being one of us, that you do like to work out. I hate you now. Now you gotta go.
Oh boy. All right. Well, Ben, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. And thank you as always for covering this show. It's been a lot of fun to hear your coverage and get your takes. I'm excited to see what you think of the final episode.
Can't wait. Oh, it's going to be so fun.
I mean, I like, as a Joe Schmo fan, back in the day. The final episodes are truly where it's at with shows like this. So I'm very excited to see how it plays out. And we will be back next week to talk it all through. In the meantime, we will be talking with Patch about his time on the show. Very excited to ask him some questions about his suspicions, where they came from, where they went, and of course the betrayal by Foreign. So it'll be fun to hear from him. And I think that's about it. Ben, where can people find you? What are you up to?
Oh God. You can find me on Jetlag the Game, which is coming back after this little side project is done, on youtube.com, or better yet, nebula.tv/jetlag. Or you can just find my ramblings on Twitter, at the Wheat Germ. And I really should be getting off that horrible, horrible website, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I'll be there.
You are preaching to the choir here, unfortunately.
All right. Well, you can of course find me over on Twitch or Twitter. Stuff going on over there as well. And talking plenty of Big Brother. We got Ben to watch a couple episodes of Big Brother. Did you subject yourself to any more?
I've been keeping up a little bit with I've been peeking at, now that you told me how to watch the live feeds, I've been poking my head in from time to time. I've been keeping up with the discourse a little bit. I will admit that you got me hooked, just a little.
Okay.
So, perhaps there's more to discuss at a later junction.
Ooh.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a very popular way of following the show, is just kind of like seeing what people are saying about it on Twitter. Very interesting to know. Sasha, what do you got going on?
Yes, y'all know, if you want to know more about pop culture, if you want to know, listen, what's Brat? Why is it trending? And what is this $500 million wedding that just happened in India? And maybe all your favorite musical artists, why were they there? Check all of this out on Mess Magnets right here on Rob has the website /mess feed. If you want to know why we're covering and what we're talking about on Below Deck. Chappelle and I are talking Below Deck Med. Honestly, come for Below Deck, but stay for like toxic relationship advice right here on Rob Has a Podcast YouTube channel. And Mike Bloom and I and Taran, we're all talking scripted TV on We Know Scripted TV, where I'm covering TV for real, where we bring in your favorite reality TV stars to talk their favorite scripted show. So Davey Rickenbacker from Survivor had just come to talk about The Boys, and we talked all things comic books. And listen, he dressed up as Black Noir. So it was such a fun time. Check that out. And for everything else, just follow me on Twitter at funsize_04.
Yeah, Ben, we're so brain broken here that we call our coverage of television scripted TV coverage.
Correct.
Like I appreciate the distinction. It's not to say that there aren't scripts involved in other forms of television, but I'm sure that that's been covered by you two to a great extent. Anyway, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Ben. It's been very fun.
You're amazing as usual.
And thank you all for listening and or watching. We will see all of you next time.